everyone. Nice to see you, everyone, and the new episode of our podcast at Elif Tech. And today we have Martin, founder of OmniOpti, stealth route optimization solution. So, Martin, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad that we could record this conversation. I think this is a very relevant topic because route optimization is usually discussed through speed and cost, but security is become just as important. So, how's the day going?
Fine, thank you. Happy to be here also. Maybe if I can just tell a little bit about myself and my history somehow. I'm mathematician by profession and I worked in IT for logistics most of my career. Started in a vehicle tracking company where I was in the research department. So we were trying to improve the usage of the data that we collected. Then I also went into optimization part like time dependent routing and route optimization and so on. Then the company was taken over by a Canadian company, which is dealing also with route optimization. And I moved into business development also a little bit. But then afterwards, I also went back to academia for a couple of years, also involved in various smart city topics and so on. And later I founded my own company, which is dealing with route optimization. And yes, as you said, typically this classic route optimization is dealing mostly with costs and decrease of vehicles being used and so on. However, I've developed an algorithm which can take several objectives into account at the same time, plus can increase the safety of the operations, which is especially relevant for like security companies, cash transit, maybe some artworks, or also transfers of important people, whether VIPs or also the bad guys, like transports from the prison to the courthouse and so on.
And yeah, that's great to hear because today I would like to focus on how stealth route optimization can support safer and more secure deliveries in real operations. So, just to start from the broader picture, Harco is no longer only about someone like breaking into a truck. It has become more planned and intelligent. So, are delivery routes still being planned as if the threat is like old-fashioned, Martin?
Too often it's being done old-fashioned style. And also the routes are very predictable very often, especially when you have some checking some areas or several locations. Very often surveillance personnel takes the same route every time. So you can see it in movies also, the bad
Yeah.
guys timing where they're going to be at what time and so on. It's really important to be less predictable, to change things on the fly also sometimes, so that if somebody has a plan how to outsmart you, then their plan should not work if you do this. So going back somehow to how I came up with this idea. I was also very involved in various classic route optimization problems or projects, let's say. And very often you get a lot of different solutions. So route optimization or vehicle routing problem,
Yeah.
it's a very complex mathematical problem, and you can have a lot of different possibilities. It's like playing chess a little bit. And
Agree.
also the process of optimization consists of trying a lot of different options and checking which one is better, or let's say remembering the best one that you've tried so far. However, there are a lot of options which are also quite similar, where the prices are not so much different, but the solution is different. So
Yeah.
there are two layers of this stealth optimization. One is choose different sequence of locations, and the other is choosing different paths between pairs of location. Choosing different sequence, this is something that can be done also by the classical approaches. You just need to remember a lot of options and then randomly select one of them. And for this stealth routing, so having a specific path between locations. I developed this algorithm which can provide a lot of options. Later on, I will also maybe share a screen and show a demo how this looks like. But the important thing is to be less predictable, to offer various options or solutions so that you can reduce predictability and increase safety. Also, one more thing, how I actually came up with this idea is because we were checking plans versus execution of the routes. And of course, because it's such a difficult mathematical problem, usually the execution was worse than the plan. But in one case, I noticed that the execution was actually better. There were less kilometers. Time was perhaps like 10% less kilometers, and time was maybe 2% higher. And I was really intrigued by that. How is that possible? And we found out that actually the driver took some shortcuts. And that inspired me somehow to try to find shortcuts in a mathematical way somehow, because people are used to that. We have some experience and knowledge, and we can find alternative routes and shortcuts and so on. However, computers do what they're told somehow, so you need to find a way how to explain them, how to give them instructions, to also find something which is not so clear or not, which doesn't stand out, so to find also other options. Typically you do some like genetic algorithms or something like that, but those are horribly slow. So I was lucky enough to find the way how to do that in a faster way. Also, another story, I live in Ljubljana in Slovenia, in the capital, and my wife's family, they live in Brda, which is close to Nova Gorica, which is a very nice winemaking area on the border with Italy, and we often go there during the weekends. However, the highway is quite long and it takes a long detour. And very often, and especially in summer where there's a lot of tourists and crowd on the streets, we take a shortcut which goes through the hills. And this is also where the old Roman road used to go. But Google never provided me that option, Google Maps. They even gave me the fastest route, which is the highway, or the shortest route, which was through the hills, but it also took all the other local roads, on the way. So what we do is we take a part of road on the highway, then go to the local road, and then again a part of the road on the highway again. And this was never provided by Google. And I improved that algorithm for as long as until I obtained the solution which I felt was also good enough.
And that's great because it would be great to talk more about directly about your approach, because OmniOpti defines sales routing around multiply route options that reduce predictability and increase safely. But can you tell me what does that look like in a real delivery operation when you have like the VIP, as you mentioned previously? So could you tell us more about it?
Yes. Well, let me just share the screen. I think that that's going to be the best way, and I'll show you a small demo of how that actually looks like. Here's an example between two cities in Slovenia, between Idrija and Šoštanj. And we can see that we have 25 different options how to go from point A to point B. And what people usually take is the fastest route, which is this one, number one, and the green here, or maybe the shortest route. This can also be obtained easily. However, we find a lot of options in between. And those options are all non-dominated, meaning Pareto optimal, meaning the best in some sense. So there is no other possibility which would be better in both dimensions. So here we have two-dimensional optimization. So time and distance. And we have 25 different options which optimize those two objectives. Typically, everybody takes the fastest route because this is time is really important in logistics. And what we can do is we can also find shortcuts which are fast enough. So depending on the time windows that you have and I don't know, total working time and so on, we can find, for example, the shortest path which would still be fast enough. And we've seen that in most cases we can reduce the distance driven and also fuel cost and emissions by additional 5 to 15%. So this is the, let's say, economic benefit. Practically anyone who does some local logistics can achieve these savings. However, for security companies, there's this added value of reduced predictability, increased safety, because if the bad guys know that you're taking the fastest route, they can ambush and attack you anywhere on this road. So they can think in advance and they can see which location is somehow the most vulnerable so that you can be attacked there. However, if you have 25 different options, this becomes less feasible. So if they don't know which route you're taking, then they cannot ambush you. And this is the main benefit. So how can we use this in real life operations? Simply, when you need to go from point A to point B, you just randomly choose one of those options. Maybe you filter out those who might perhaps really take too much time or might perhaps not be suitable for some other reasons, but there's still a lot of options left which can be used. So if you just randomly use one of those, you will be a lot less predictable and therefore safer. So this is the main topic. Also, what I wanted to mention is here we also can use different vehicle types, define those vehicle types also, and according to properties of the road network, we can select which roads can be taken by those vehicles and which not. So some roads might be closed for heavy vehicles, for example, or maybe the width or the height is too big, so it's not accessible. So, and also the speed profiles are different, of course. So in this case, we have 17 different options, and let's say for a large truck, we get 19 different options. So again, different roads and different travel times which can be used here.
Yeah, that's clear. And also, like I have a few points here because the first one, just to summarize, it's no longer only like about the distance or ETA for logistics companies, but about like balancing a wider set of priorities. And also,
Yeah.
such balance is key because logistics teams need something they can actually operate with a daily basis. So they could no need to like implement it a few days ago. So they could be well prepared. They can do it in real time, and that's like that's amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. We can also use, let's say, traffic conditions, or maybe some roads get closed and so on. So you need to take this into account also in real time. And as I mentioned, in this case, we have only two dimensions, which are time and distance, but we can use any other objectives and also more objectives at the same time. For example, time, distance, costs, emissions, maybe safety, if you can say, okay, we want to avoid some dangerous areas or something like that. Or perhaps we've just done some tests with curvature. So you want straight roads, you don't want winding roads because maybe you have some cargo which is delicate, it can be harmed. So it's not good that you have a lot of winding roads, for some cargo. On the other hand, maybe the motorbike drivers, they like winding roads, because it's fun when you drive on winding mountain roads and so on. So some want to maximize those values, some want to minimize those values. Anything that you can describe with a number, we can use it for the optimization.
Maybe one of the final angles that I would like to ask and touch on our podcast is the workflow around the algorithm itself. Because OmniOpti can provide dispatcher interface, driver, mobile apps, and optional customer messaging. Uh, where can you tell me where does the software workflow become just as important as the algorithm itself?
Of course, it's really important that, well, first of all, that you have good data, clean data, because of course, software and digitalization doesn't help a lot if your data is not clean.
Mhm.
And the second thing is also that it is accepted by the users. So what we kind of prefer is that we only act as a plugin into other systems. Our modules are cloud modules which can be integrated via API to the existing systems. Why do we prefer this? Because the users are already using some solutions usually, and they're used to it. And it's always difficult to change something that you're used to. So that's why we love partnerships, and we prefer our modules being integrated into the existing solutions so that the workflow somehow changes minimally. For example, also the classic route optimization that we also do is it delivers a lot of value, but typically the implementation takes a lot of time. First you need to check the data, then you need to integrate with all the systems. You have to decide and work with the stakeholders. Like typically my experience is that dispatchers are not so keen on introducing such new systems. Well, in the best case, we've rolled out the system. From the decision to the rolling out, it was less than 2 weeks, but this was during Corona, COVID. So it was really urgent and people really wanted it.
Mhm.
If people want it, we can do it really fast. However, in most other cases, it can take months or even years. However, for this stealth routing, this is really a small add on, which not interfering so much with the existing workflow. So it just tells you where to go if you already know the point A and point B. So everything that you need is a sequence of locations, time windows, vehicle types, and so on. But all this is already known in most cases. So we just select the path which can be taken. So this modification or augmentation of the existing IT systems is really fast and simple. And it doesn't affect the workflow of the process, but it can deliver a lot of value. First of all is reducing fuel costs. So this is for any logistics company. And the second is this increased safety, which is non-tangible added value. So it's difficult to quantify that. How much is it worth? But it is a really important added value for all sorts of security logistics companies. Yeah, one more thing that I would also like to emphasize is
Sure.
that there's also kind of a sweet spot where this is useful. So we like to say typically when locations are, let's say, 5 to 50 kilometers apart, that's the sweet spot. It doesn't work if it's really every 100 meters, like picking up the garbage or delivering letters or something like that, because you don't have a lot of options there. And it also probably doesn't work in very long distance, like 1,000 kilometers, because usually there's only one highway that really makes sense, and what happens then locally is not so important. But also, well, in this case, for example, we have like 130 kilometers. So even up to a few hundred kilometers, it also works. Like I've done also some tests in Ukraine in the past, and even like 300-400 kilometers, you can find really good examples of where this stealth routing or alternative routes.
That's great, Martin. Because one of the best points that you mentioned, I believe, because in the end, it's not about like the value for the routing logic, but it's also how it is integrated into real like business workflow, so they could use it like on the first day. And yeah, I believe like the final angle that I wanted to mention is how logistics companies can move to prevention of such security issues. Because in cargo security, preventing problems is like more important than fixing them later, after the issue. What can you suggest to logistics teams to help them to plan for unpredictable movements rather than just to react to issues that they arise?
If you have issues, analyze them and see what was the root cause and somehow try to avoid that. But well, in some cases, this could also help. Maybe not in all of them. However, to see what the benefit of our solution can be, we can do simulations or studies or test runs. So it's really easy to see how much value we can bring to a specific company. So the best way or the easiest way is just to use some historic data. This can also be anonymized. Of course, we do the NDAs and everything, and even then, maybe some information can be anonymized and so on. Or in one case right now, which is really security sensitive, they also were giving us some synthetic data. So they came up with some artificial or made up information, and now we're working on that to see, at least as an initial proof of concept, so that they can understand what value we can deliver. And then when they will be more, let's say, sure about what we can do, then we'll also move to um, more detailed and more real life tests, and then eventually integration also. But there are different layers or different steps that we can take in order to make sure that everything runs as it should be and to minimize risks on every step of the way. One more thing that I also want to mention is that this works on almost any kind of network. So right now we're doing this for road networks, but we're also planning on modifying the flow and everything to also find routes on the terrain, which can be very important, especially maybe in some rescue missions, and maybe if there's some natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, landslides, or something like that. Then you might not be able to use the roads, and you need to maybe reach some points with other types of vehicles going across the terrain. And then you also need to decide, there are trade-offs. You want to go there fast, but also in short, but there are different types of terrain or vegetation which can allow different speeds of moving and so on. So there are a lot of different objectives that might be taken into account. So right now we're also already done initial tests for optimization on the sea, so for ships. because there you also want to take care about the speed, fuel consumption, also safety regarding the winds and the waves and so on. And the next plan is also to use it for air navigation, so for drones or airplanes, and also for terrain. So there's a lot of things that can still be done, and we're kind of looking for the use cases where this would be most useful to deliver the most value.
Yes, yes, I totally agree, Martin. And yeah, thank you again for joining us today and shared such insights from your perspective. I think that one of the takeaways from our conversations is that logistics today, visibility alone is not enough, and prediction and route prediction is not enough, because everyone we should know about and remember about security. So yeah, thanks again for sharing such useful insights, and thanks everyone to watching our podcast this time. If you find this conversation useful, feel free to share it across the social media, like it and share it. And yeah, see you next time.
Thank you.